Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I'm going to give you guys another batch of some of the craziest and coolest user-created cards that I've stumbled upon. Some of these are just, some of my viewers just sent me. Most of them, I guess, are from Reddit Custom Hearthstone, and they have a bit of a ranking thing every week that gets posted on the Hearthstone subreddit. I always check that out. A lot of really cool ideas, and it always inspires me to see how bright the future of Hearthstone could be. Kick it off, I got the Goblin Hideout, 0-cost rogue spell, shuffle 3 Mad Bombers into your opponent's deck. I really like this card because it kind of breaks some of the consistency in some of the decks, and while it's like a 0-value spell, it encourages you to basically play a combo-like rogue, which I feel like, we don't want that deck getting out of control, but I think it could use just a little bit of help, and I think right now, actually, it would be a really cool card to introduce into the game. We got Doombringer Warrior card, 4-cost 4/1 weapon, and attacking a damaged minion doesn't cost durability. This idea is really interesting. It's kind of like the Gorehowl effect, but a bit more restrictive, but you can get much, much more out of the weapon if you choose. And I think it plays into like the whole warrior damaged minion thing, which, kind of struggles against some of the aggressive decks, which I think means it should be quite powerful against everything else. And I think this card is in line with that. And another warrior weapon, Shield Spikes, 3-cost 0/1 weapon, deal 2 damage to any character who attacks you. At the end of your turn, destroy this card if you have no armor. So get a bunch of armor and play Shield Spikes and hope that it knocks out a bunch of guys. It's a really cool way to kind of mask like enchantment style cards, like status effect style cards that, they kind of got into play with Un'Goro with the whole quest thing, but not really in the style that I think a lot of us imagined, where this kind of fits quite nicely in like a weapon format, and it being a weapon, there are already counters in the game. So I think it's quite interesting that this idea is possible, that we can kind of put enchantments kind of in the weapon slot in Hearthstone, and thematically that might be a bit difficult to make sense, but I think practically in terms of gameplay, I think it would be really cool. I want to play a game. 5-cost warrior spell, cast Bouncing Blade, then Sleep with the Fishies, and then Whirlwind in that order. So these are just like crazy cards that have a sequence in them. I've seen a few in the past, but this is probably one of the best ones. Just so cool. I do actually want to see cards like these come into the actual game, because there's one thing to have like randomness, there's another to have systemic randomness in a sequence, because it kind of mellows out the result a bit, especially in cases like this one. Clumsy Servant, 2-cost 2/2 Warlock card, and the battle card, discover a spell and discard it at the end of your turn. So it's a pretty weak 2-drop, but you generally play this in a control deck, and you can generally save it for the late game to try to get that spell, be in a control deck, hopefully. And it's pretty interesting, largely because a lot of the Warlock spells are so clunky, and that's why it's kind of like the Clumsy Servant. It's just a very well-rounded card. I'd really appreciate cards like this in the game, where you have the discovery effect, but you control the randomness, right? So, if you play this on like turn 4, you're only going to play something that costs 2 or less. You're in control of that, and it's very well masked. It's not like, discover a 1-cost card, discover a 2-cost card. It's kind of like that. You dictate the randomness. Really like that. Survival of the Fittest, 3-cost hunter spell, deal 2 damage to all minions and adapt those that survive. So pretty clever board clear. I think I've seen a card like this few of the card games that I've played lately, not exactly in this way, but I've seen like damage effects that have like attack buffs, and with this it's a little bit different than that, but maybe not so much more different, because a lot of the hunter cards are either very small, so you just, hit them in, and then you have like the mid-range cards like 3 and 4 health, which survive the effect and can have like a huge burst. It's also a card that generally relies on having some kind of board presence to really make use of it, because hunter can't just, kill minions and own with hero power anymore. There's a lot more burst. There's a lot good control cards that stop this chip damage. So kind of got to get a bit more out of it, and overall just really interesting. Wandering Permafrost. 4 cost 2/5 elemental. Battlecry freeze a minion. If you played elemental last turn, it remains frozen while this minion is in play. These are like knockout effects. I've seen them a lot in Magic the Gathering, and they are actually really cool. They kind of, funnel your focus into one aspect of the game temporarily, and that just kind of changes the flow of the game rather than, I'm playing a face deck, so I'm going to go face, and if stuff goes in the way, I'll just get rid of it if I can, if I need to, if I absolutely have to. But this kind of gets around that a little bit, and this type of effect I think would be very interesting to see play in Hearthstone. Voodoo Puppeteer, 3 cost 2/3 Warlock card, and Battlecry discards a minion and summons a 1/1 copy of it. So I think this is one of the more balanced token creation cards that I've seen, especially because it has synergy with just a few of the other discard mechanics in the game. You can certainly have some pretty abusive effects, like, you can get like a Malagos, and you can play like a Spell Burst Warlock, or you can play like a Zoo. You can have powerful Death Rattle effects. So really, really cool possibilities. False Prophet, a 2 cost 0/7 neutral card. Until this minion takes damage, it appears as a Doomsayer to your opponent. How cool is that? It makes it so if you run Doomsayer, you can think about running 2 False Prophets and just really trip up your opponent into just, sinking damage into these. It might be a little bit weaker against some of the other cards, but it's just so cool. Like, you play this, you might think it's a Doomsayer, you might even do like a Frost Nova. It's like, okay, well, I guess I can't deal with that, I'll play nothing. And the Doomsayer doesn't actually trigger when it's time to go off. And then your opponent realizes they just skipped a turn for no reason. So, oh man, so cool. Thorn Queen Sentis, 4 cost 3/4. Rogue card, transforms your rose petals into eviscerates. Seen a few of these effects in other card games. I generally think they're very good. When you have a theme like the whole rose petal crap from Ungoro that doesn't actually work out, rather than just introducing a new theme in the following expansion, tying in expansions together, I think, is very important, and I think it's something Blizzard should actually start looking at. And a card like this, I think, is very good. Some of the failed archetypes, rather than building and coming up with just extremely powerful cards to push these archetypes, as we've seen with some of the beast decks and shit like that in the past, rather something like this in a different direction just makes extreme use of a failed archetype, and that's just such a clean way to move the game forward. Fell Addiction. 2 cost Warlock card, draw 2 cards, and replace 2 cards in your deck with this card. So, at the end of playing Fell Addiction, you're just going to have a whole bunch of Fell Addictions in your deck. It's tough to know if this card is any good, but it's just so cool and so crazy. I feel it's one of those cards that could be pretty good. Rarely would it ever be game breaking, and then when it's just pretty good and has kind of that interesting of an effect, it'll just have people playing this card and playing decks that include this card just for the sake of playing this card. And I think that's pretty necessary. Lead the Charge, 3 cost warrior card, gain 11 armor, and give your hero taunt. When you have no more armor, your hero loses taunt. So, okay, I really like the idea of the card, but of course, this might be a little bit rough when used with, fairly aggressive decks, combos, and crap like Frothing Berserker, making it so only spells can deal with the minions. That's a little bit problematic, but just the idea of this, I think, is really cool, forcing your opponent to hit your face intentionally when so many decks already want to do that, but giving, a pretty considerable advantage in another part of the game. Maybe not a warrior card. I'd struggle to see how it thematically can work out as another class's card, but the effect is just so cool and so interesting that I think it merits the mention. Power Trip. Warlock Quest. All your minions have +1/+1. Reach 10 mana crystals. Reward, die. I think this is about as cool as we've seen quests. We also know that quests, because they take up your yes, they take up a card in your starting hand, but the biggest thing is that if you're playing an aggressive deck, it takes up your first turn worth of plays. So I actually think this card kind of sucks. But again, the idea, so cool. I think it might be better if like your minions had like +0, +3 or something like that, just like 3 extra health. Or like, I don't know if you want to do like an attack weight. I think that'd be a bit busted. But yeah, you get the idea. I think the idea of having like crazy stats and the quest being a negative one to complete. Don't you want to play that card? I want to make a deck right now. Right? Man. Chakra Channeler, 3-cost, 3/4 priest card. At the end of your turn, if this minion didn't attack, restore 4 health to your hero. The option to like attack versus not attack for constant effects, I think is a really cool way to have like a multi-purpose card. And I think this is probably the best one that I've seen with that style. So nice. And lastly on this list, we got Cowardly Brute, 3-cost, 4/4, slightly overstated guy, and this minion cannot attack first each turn. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool and stuff. But actually, what I've noticed is with the actually I don't remember what it's called, the Beast, the Silithid or whatever, the 3-cost, 3/5 that can only attack after your hero attacks that turn. That has made me appreciate mechanics like these a lot more, because sometimes, of course, you're usually playing Rogue in Arena when you have that card. You gotta like take a ton of damage going face first into a taunt minion. Like you gotta make some really crappy and costly attacks just to use the card, and putting yourselves in those difficult situations and coming out making very difficult correct decisions is gameplay I really enjoy. Yeah. And I think with that, it kind of encompasses all the cards I mentioned today. Hearthstone can have so many different directions of gameplay rather than just, I'm going to play aggro decks, I'm going to play control decks, I think there's so many cards that fit into those archetypes, but temporarily change it in a very significant way that I think would add real diversity to games. And, hopefully some of the right people are paying attention to that concept. Let me know what you think about it. I hope you guys enjoy my review, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.